Have you ever wondered what really separates a cool idea from a business that actually works? Well, a lot of the time, it just comes down to the numbers. So today, we are going to peel back the curtain on that financial journey every single business takes. From the very first dollar spent to that crucial moment when it finally starts to turn a profit.
So let's start with a classic dream. Just picture it. You're opening your own coffee shop. You've got the perfect spot, an awesome name, and you are totally passionate about making the best coffee in town. It really feels like the dream is coming true.
But here comes the first reality check. Because before a single customer even walks through that door, before you even smell those beans roasting, the bills are already on their way.
And that brings us to our very first big idea. The costs that are just baked in from day one. These are the expenses you are locked into before you've sold a single thing.
Okay, so let's imagine a bit of a nightmare scenario. It's your first month in business, and for whatever reason, you sell 0 cups of coffee. Absolutely none. How much money are you on the hook for? Now remember, you had to pay $2,000 for rent and another $500 for insurance.
The answer? A cool $2,500. Yep, that's right. Even with 0 sales, you're already in the hole. And this kind of mandatory, non-negotiable expense has a name. It's called a fixed cost. Fixed costs, sometimes called overhead, they're your financial baseline. They're predictable, they're constant, and you've got to pay them whether you make one thing or a million things. They're the absolute foundation of your entire business's cost structure.
All right, let's fast forward a bit. The doors are open, customers are finally coming in, and we are selling coffee. This is where a whole new type of cost comes into play. See, for every single cup of coffee you sell, you have to spend an extra 50 cents on all the stuff that goes into it. The beans, the milk, the cup. So if you sell 10 cups, that's an extra $5. If you sell 1,000, it's an extra 500. This cost goes up and down directly with your sales. And right here, you can see the huge difference. Fixed costs, like your rent, they're just this flat, predictable line. But variable costs, like our coffee beans, they climb right alongside our sales. One is constant, the other is all about how busy you are.
Which brings us to a super simple but really powerful little formula. Your total costs are just your steady fixed costs plus your up and down variable costs. If you can get a handle on this equation, you've got a real-time grip on your business's financial health. Okay, now we get to the really fun part. What happens when your business starts to grow? Well, this is where getting bigger can give you an almost magical kind of financial advantage.
To really see this in action, we're going to leave our little coffee shop for a second and visit a company called Bright Lights Limited, and they are going to show us the incredible power of what we call scale.
So Bright Lights has fixed costs of $3,000 a month for their factory lease and all that. Now, when they only make 1,000 light bulbs, that entire $3,000 has to be spread across that small batch. You add in the variable costs, and the average cost to make just one bulb ends up being $5. But just watch what happens when they ramp up production to 6,000 bulbs. That same $3,000 factory cost is now spread so thin across so many more units that the average cost per bulb gets slashed in half, down to just $2.50. Now that is the magic of scale. And this whole phenomenon has a name. It's called economies of scale. It is one of the most fundamental ideas in all of business. Basically, as you grow, the cost of making each individual item goes down. That means you can either make more profit or lower your prices to compete. Of course, getting too big can sometimes make you slow, but that cost advantage is pretty undeniable.
And look, this doesn't just happen by accident. Businesses do this on purpose. They achieve it by buying materials in bulk for huge discounts, spreading their ad budget over millions of customers, investing in better, faster machines, and even getting cheaper loans from banks because, hey, they're seen as a safer bet.
Okay, so we get our costs, and we see why growing is so powerful. But there is one question, one critical question that pretty much every business owner loses sleep over. At what point do we stop losing money and actually start making it?
Well, that is the break-even point. It's that precise moment where the money coming in from sales perfectly matches the money going out for costs. You're not making a profit yet, no, but you're not losing money either. It is the absolute bare minimum target for survival. And you have to remember, it's a moving target. It changes every time your costs or prices change.
I want you to think of it like a financial heart monitor. Below the break-even point, the business is basically flatlining. But the instant it crosses that line, it has a pulse. It's alive. And every single sale you make after that point, that's pure profit.
And this isn't some big mystery. Managers use a specific formula to nail this down. You just take your total fixed costs and you divide them by how much profit you make on each individual item. The answer tells you the exact number of units you need to sell just to keep the lights on.
So hitting your break-even point is a huge deal, but let's be honest, nobody wants to live on that knife's edge forever. So what's next? How do you actually create a safety net for the business?
That safety net, that buffer is called the margin of safety. It's just the gap between what you're actually selling and what you need to sell to break even. So if you need to sell 1,000 units a month to break even, but you're actually selling 1,500, your margin of safety is 500 units. It is your financial breathing room.
And there you have it. Those are the financial building blocks of pretty much any business. From the anchor of your fixed costs to the incredible power of scale, all the way to finding that crucial tipping point where you finally become profitable. So, now that you understand the rules of the game, the only question left is, what would you build?